Hello, everyone. Welcome to Stress-Free IEP, the show where we help families build their village to raise their neurodivergent children with confidence and support. I'm your host, Frances Schefter, special education attorney, advocate, and fellow parent walking this journey with you. Each week, we shine a light on the professionals, resources, and real-world strategies that can empower you to navigate the IEP process and beyond. Whether you're tuning in live on Facebook or YouTube, or listening later on your favorite podcast app, we're so glad you're here. And as you're listening, we'd love to hear from you. Drop your questions in the comments or ask them live. We're paying attention and we promise to respond. Let's dive in and meet today's amazing guest. Matthew Fishleder is a licensed psychotherapist serving adults in Maryland and California. He focuses on parents that are feeling stressed, overwhelmed, or unsure of their footing in the day-to-day reality of family life. He helps parents slow down, understand their own reactions, and find a steadier, more authentic parenting voice that fits who they are. His approach blends mindfulness, practical brain science, and deep self-understanding with a focus on presence over perfection and connection over control. Matthew, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited to have you because as a parent of neurodivergent children, well, any parent, like all of us are stressed and overwhelmed. And are we doing it right? Because I know for me, at least, as soon as I think I have it figured out, the kids change switch it all up again. And then it's like, wait a minute. So I love that you do and you focus on the parents. What got you into doing this?
I think in part becoming a parent. I worked with parents and families beforehand, but not specifically from this perspective and honestly with the lived experience of, just like you said, I think I have a handle on this, and to find that suddenly there's some developmental leap or existential crisis or whatever it might be that is like, now I have no idea. So the exploration of that, and in preparation for becoming a parent, I was reading a lot, having a background in child development. And it's like, okay, but from the perspective of being a parent, how to navigate these kinds of intentional moments of responding to kids rather than following that neurological impulse, that learned impulse toward reacting.
Right. And trying to turn off our triggers, right? As parents.
I've come to think of it as noticing our triggers. Noticing our triggers and reconnecting with the ability to make choices even in the presence of triggeredness.
Okay.
Lovely to be able to get in there like a mechanic or a computer engineer maybe, and find where those triggers are and turn them on. Actually, for even including in parenting, that becoming aware that we're triggered and making a choice somewhat independently of that triggeredness, kind of reconnecting with what's important to us inside. And I think we'll continue talking about that today. That the trigger response starts to get relaxed over time. It's almost like it gradually turns down the volume on a dial as opposed to us digging in there and shutting it off.
Interesting. Which is probably easier to do that because triggers are triggers, right? And they from our ingrained past as children ourselves. And I guess it makes more sense because like thinking it through now, I'm like, well, if you're turning off a trigger, are you just stuffing down those emotions and feelings? Right.
That's what I've really encountered, is that when people come to me and ask me, how do I, in some language or another, how do I turn this off? How do I stop thinking this way? feeling this way. And I try to lean into a kind of creative helplessness of like, this seems to be happening and we don't know how to turn it off. And turning it off, or seeming to turn it off, doesn't seem to work. In that you're still reacting the way that you are, you're still coming and asking for some support. But the creative helplessness is in noticing that the trigger is happening and accepting not the content of it, but the presence of it. Like this is here and now happening in my mind and in my body. And in noticing that, what do I choose to do? In noticing that I'm triggered, do I choose to get a glass of water? Do I choose to take a deep breath before I respond to my kid who is tugging at my pants or untying my shoes, et cetera, et cetera? Or do I choose to inhale and exhale and connect with some deeper value that I hold inside about how I choose to parent, as opposed to, like you're saying, how I might be inclined to parent given how I was parented.
Yeah, it's so true. Or what I say sometimes is tap out. Like you get to the point of like I get so triggered I can't, and what's going to come out of my mouth is just not, and I just need a minute and step away. And my kids understand that now, which is great because they know, okay, mommy's triggered and that's okay. And that's normal. And what is mommy doing? Mommy's going to go calm herself down and then we'll have a conversation about it.
And it's something like that is such incredible modeling for kids.
Yeah.
That they can trust that you're not walking away. I'm sure this took time to develop, that you're not walking away as a rejection, but as that you need to self-soothe for a second before you come back and have a conversation. That's modeling for them that that's something that's okay to do. And that in a mature reciprocal relationship, someone can walk away, say, I need a minute before we talk about this, and walk away, and we'll come back, and isn't disappearing on them.
Right. Which I know, like for me, there's been a lot of personal growth as being a parent. Especially I have two neurodivergent children that are very, very different. And so, I mean, parenting every child is different anyway, but then add neurodivergence in there and it just like what works for one is the total opposite for another. And then like, how are we, because I know, how are we fair? Because it's that treating our children equal, but equal doesn't mean the same, right?
I showed my son the other day it made the rounds on the internet, I think at some point in the last 10 years or longer, the image of the equal, equitable, and liberated ideas in reference to three people trying to see over a fence at a baseball game. Equal was every size, like wooden box, little soap box. There was an adult, a biggest school age kid, and like a toddler. The adult and the school age kid could see over, but the toddler couldn't. Equitable was they had different size boxes, so they could all see over the fence. That's what I think of when you mention that. It can't be equal, and different people, different kids are going to have different needs to be able to access or have that feeling of access and fairness.
Right. Which is where the IEPs and 504s come in the classroom. It's like people,
I thought exactly. Yeah.
We're evening the playing field. We're not giving anybody a leg up. We're not, we're just evening the playing field so that everybody has, I guess it's equitable access to everything, that they can access the curriculum in the same way, in the way, in equitable ways. Yeah. because it's so, I mean, parenting is, there's no handbook. And even if there were a handbook, it would be how many, hundreds of chapters, not even pages of like, oh, if this, then this, and, but there's nothing, because kids are, we say it all the time of like, you've met one autistic child, you've met one autistic child, but that's with all children. Like every single child is wired differently, right?
And yeah, and there are, in a way, there are so many people striving to write the manual, that there are libraries full of manuals, and you could get multiple recommendations from people that are directly in conflict with each other. Could read books, even within the same book, could get vastly different approaches sometimes. And that's why at a certain point, I started to move away from the question of how to parent. And I'm taking some of this language from Dan Siegel, as a psychiatrist. He's incredible. I'm going to mention him again in a second. Away from how to parent, like how to find the right handbook, and toward how we parent as animals, as humans. What are our tendencies? What psychologically happens for the parent to go from having been parented as a child to now being a parent of a child? And what learning gets repurposed, and how can we be mindful of that learning trying to inform how we react, and how much does that take away from responding to the kid in front of us? And Dan Siegel, I've read a number of his books specifically on parenting and other things, but really looks into how we parent, how we our behavioral, psychological, and really neurological tendencies that can be applied to a really diverse range of neurodevelopmental profiles.
And it's so true, because I think about, behavior modification. And so often, like when I was growing up, that was, behavior modification, or, whatever that was. And it was focused on the child and changing the child's behavior. But in reality, it's changing the parent's reaction to behavior sometimes is what's needed, because the child's who the child is, and that you're not going to change their personality. You're not going to change, like their nature, but how we approach that. One of the things I say often with my kids is that they have amazing skills. They're going to be awesome when they're young adults. Absolutely awesome. But on children, it doesn't work so well, but I want to be able to parent them, but not quash that in them. Their inquisitiveness, their I don't want to say arguing, but yeah, arguing, negotiating, all these things, like,
yeah,
right.
You're talking about that spark of self. The when you see a kid negotiating, not simply because the phrase I tend to always use is because they want ice cream for dinner.
Right.
That's kind of a microcosm of all of it. But rather engaging in conversation with a parent about why something doesn't feel fair, or how something feels, and that it's not fair that you're making me feel that way. I don't like the way we're doing this. And that really is that emergence of self. I was reading a story about online about a dad whose 11-year-old finally decided, or not finally, but decided that he no longer wanted to have the really cozy, cuddly story time, bedtime routine, singing together. And it's like, I'm 11, I'm kind of over this, Dad. And how incredible it is to have seen this assertion of a real self, a real opinion. And I think that's what you're talking about. We see these real opinions come out.
Yeah, definitely. And again, it's, there are times I say to my children, you know what, this is not negotiable.
Right.
Like there are some things 100% I will negotiate with you, but this right here
Mhm.
is not negotiable and it's going to happen, period. Sometimes that works, but not always. My kids.
Sometimes.
Right.
Sometimes.
But that's what parenting is, and that's what it's all about is letting the kids push the boundaries and setting
Obs-
those boundaries, right?
Observing and celebrating when you see kids pushing boundaries in ways that make you feel um, proud, um, and other things like scared, frustrated,
Yeah.
sad. I mean, to my my oldest is 6, and to imagine the bedtime routine moving away from that, it's like
Oh,
crushing, which
right.
is fine, which is fine, right? It's real. Um, and yeah, the process of seeing that emergence of the real kid that that your baby is becoming.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. They're not a baby anymore, right? They
they're
start
not in
when it
the lab.
starts coming. I mean, mine are almost 12. At the end of the month, she will be 12 and 8. So yeah, we're in the fun preteen years with mine.
Yeah,
Um, which is definitely taking that step back and re-regulating myself because her hormones are all over the place and
sure.
behavior and fabulous middle school drama, which we all lived through, and how to help find that within myself to be regulated,
Hmm.
right? So that I don't match her level when she gets dysregulated, but for me to help bring her dysregulation down.
And we have to. That's something that I help a lot of parents with is that idea or the reality. Again, speaking to how we parent. When we as parent are um, as parents are dysregulated, our nervous systems and our minds are going to have a hard time helping our kid to regulate
Right.
and to self-regulate. We have to start with recognizing our own dysregulation, being curious about what has dysregulated me. Um, and that's where the some of the more insight oriented like work and self exploration can really help a lot of parents as having gotten to know oneself and these parts of oneself that can get triggered to recognize I'm getting triggered because this reminds me of mom that one time, my mom that one time,
Right.
and how unseen I felt. And now my kid's yelling at me because she's feeling unseen. That's dysregulating. Again, the creative helplessness. It makes sense to me that that's dysregulating right now. How do I want to respond to my daughter?
Yeah.
Right. Um,
I was say
coming
it
from that
sounds easier
insight,
than it is,
it
right?
sounds it sounds much easier than it is for incest, and it I tell I tell my clients pretty frequently, the parents I work with, I say, you and I are working on this together. Help you to feel better about this. And let's not talk about how often I use these things in practice because
Right.
it's a growing process. It's a growing process. And
Right.
I think of it that way as opposed to really work. It's a growing process of um, planting seeds in oneself, planting seeds in one's relationships, um, and observing how that might grow.
Right. And it makes sense because as our children get older, our triggers are going to be changing because experiences in our life are changing, right? And our experiences from at that age or whatever it might be, it's all changing constantly. So we have to constantly um, be on our toes and work with, oh wait, there's another trigger. Where did that come from? Right.
I'm reminded of something I've talked to parents of teenagers about what seems to be a tradition across generations, at least from my own experience, is that teenagers say to their parents, "Don't you ever remember having been 15? Don't you remember what this is like?"
Mm.
And parents have a hard time responding to that because we're so dysregulated, fully situated in how we felt when we felt this way at 15.
Right.
But being able to notice that and self-regulate and say to our kids, to that 15-year-old, of course, I remember that. It's really confusing. It's really hard. How does that have to do with what's happening now, right?
Right.
With you staying out late, what's going on?
Right.
When we connect that and unlock the door kind of past our own defenses, can
Right.
really help.
Yeah. Kind of like when I was your age, if I had done something like that, my parents would have, right?
That's sort of the flip side of it.
Right.
The the upward comparison. You have it better than I
Mhm.
did, as a kind of is often not literally a threat, but almost experienced by kids, and at times that it can be experienced as like a veiled threat. Like, are you gonna
Right.
do that to me, right? Um, but yeah, that's kind of the flip side of it, is of when a parent gets really stuck in what their experience was and is trying to convey to their kid, like, how hard how hard this is to not do what was done to me, how hard
Right.
this is to feel the way that I felt back then in this moment.
Yeah.
um
And
yeah.
I was gonna say that's probably a lot of work to do of when you were younger and your parents did that, how did it
Mhm,
make you feel? And
mhm.
do you want to make your child feel that way?
And do you want to
Right.
make your child feel that way, and what can you do to own that you felt that way then,
Mhm.
and that your brain is reminding you now, as a result you're feeling that way now,
Right.
um, or something similar to it, and accepting all of these, that your brain is braining, if that makes sense. Your human brain is doing a human brain thing. Um,
Right.
we have these 200,000-year-old brains, this ancient hardware running ancient operating system with software that we've continued updating in the last 5,000 years. Right? Um,
Yeah.
and we have all these things from childhood that just like just fly into our face when our kids having a hard time because they're hungry and tired and they've had a long day at school, and you're telling them no about something. You can't have ice cream for dinner, right? Um, yeah.
Yeah. Although my, philosophy on that has somewhat changed. Not as a daily, but, like, we went, my husband and I took the kids to a Cheesecake Factory, and so I
Hmm.
told them when we got there, I was like, "Okay, we need to decide, we're getting 1 piece of cheesecake. We need to decide what type now for all of us to decide." And so we finally decided on one, and the waitress comes up, and I'm like, "And we would like to start with this piece of cheesecake." And my kids
Uh,
went, "What?"
yeah.
And my thought process was, let's start with the cheesecake. They'll eat the cheesecake and then they're going to actually eat the dinner versus, you know what I mean? Versus they're
Hmm.
going to nibble at the dinner and be like, I'm full because they want that cheesecake. And then they're not going to eat as much. So it was kind of that philosophy of switching it up that, well, now they always want to go to Cheesecake Factory. I'm like, we're not going to do that every time. But
And I think that's really important because you're talking about, as opposed to a 5-year-old throwing a tantrum because they want ice cream for dinner on a Tuesday at home, and we have dinner prepared, right? Um, this was you in like what I would call like a parental executive role in your family, surprising them with something exciting, and I talk about this kind of thing a fair amount with parents because it can, for some people, it can feel like, well, you're telling me um, not to say no to my kids, or um, to be lax on them, and um, in like not reacting, not saying like what you said earlier. Well, when I was your age, here's what would have happened if I had said something
Right.
like that or done something like that. But to connect with that, to slow down and connect with that centered place can be scary for some people, because it's like, well, then how am I going to teach my kid not to um, throw their spaghetti across the room, you know? And the reality of still having parental authoritative presence, like you said earlier, sometimes no is just no. Sometimes the boundary is the boundary, end of story. And sometimes mom decides, let's start with the cheesecake. That you have, as parents, you have a place in your family as, again, like a parental executive subsystem. Um, and kids still have autonomy with that. In this example, they got to choose what kind of cheesecake they wanted, but they
Right.
were surprised to have it be the first course.
Yeah, they
I
were.
want to eat dinner with you guys. Yeah. I
Yeah,
want to eat
right.
dinner with you guys.
Yeah. Every now and then we do that. But, like what happened for me was that I thought through the process of how many times do you go to restaurants and the kids know the dessert's going to be there because Cheesecake Factory, how do you go there
Mm-hmm.
without having cheesecake? And, what do they eat? They eat 3 bites of their meal and then they're full because they know they want the cheesecake. And so, like, this way, we got the cheesecake out of the way. Now we're going to eat the real food and then getting the nutrition in them. So, what difference does it make if it dessert comes first? You know? And I know some people are like, oh, well, they're going to fill up on the dessert. I'm like, we got one piece for 4 of us.
Mm-hmm.
They're
You're
not
not
going to
filling
fill.
up.
I'm not
Yeah.
getting them their own piece each because,
Yeah.
yeah, they're not going to eat anything after that. But like for 4 of us, they're not going to really fill up. So it
You're
was
putting the
it was
from a brain science perspective, you're putting the dopamine first. You're getting the dopamine out of the way, so
right,
they can nurture themselves as like
right,
a special thing. And um, it for some people may worry that you're teaching your kids that they need to have dopamine, they need to have something sweet before they eat their dinner, and it doesn't sound like this is the routine at
no,
all in your family, for example. And
yeah,
um, kids don't kids don't deeply learn from these um, outliers, from these moments that we stray briefly from a routine. They don't deeply
right,
learn that's the way this is now. They may
right,
ask a couple times or a few times, can we do that again
right.
tomorrow? um,
Well, it's funny
um,
because now they'll
yeah.
say, like, when we're like, oh, where should we go to dinner tonight? They're like, Cheesecake Factory. I'm like, we're not having cheesecake first. I'm like, oh, never
Mm-hmm.
mind then. Let's go to Silver Diner,
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they're like hoping, will mom do it again? Will mom do it again? Um, but it's, it's there's fun parts of parenting, right? That we can
Mm-hmm.
do that out of the norm, um, and makes it, I don't know, for me, it's just more fun, like being the fun parent, where I'm still the parent and setting the rules, but we can stray from them and have some fun sometimes when um, when it's appropriate, right?
Absolutely. My son has a little bit of like Nintendo time on the Switch after school, after his homework. Excuse me, after his homework, and every once in a while, it usually gets 20 minutes, and if we're like when we're playing something together, which recently we have been, the little timer on the Switch will go off, and take up my phone. I'll say, let's add 5 more minutes to the timer, or
Yeah,
10. Like, the heck, we're in the middle of a
right.
race. Let's keep going.
Yeah,
Or this
yeah.
is so much
I
fun. Let's
don't
do
want
it
to stop.
again. And yeah, I don't want to stop. And that can feel
Yeah,
really good for a kid, not
right.
just to have the time extended, but because the parent is loving having this one-on-one time, or this whatever
Yeah,
time.
spending
Um,
that extra time.
hearing "I don't want to stop being with you" can feel incredible for a kid or any of
Yeah.
us. Yeah.
Yeah. And you don't even think about that little thing, just that one little thing in that extra 10 minutes, how
Hmm.
huge of an impact it has, right? On your child.
Absolutely.
We don't
Absolutely.
like,
You're
like in
forming
general, yeah,
you're forming memories not just of that specific moment, but the network in a child's mind of um, rules can relax um, in a safe way when it comes to closeness and connection.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and that's incredibly important, I think, when it comes to adult relationships too. Um, that when it comes to actually hearing another person, whether, like I say, capital R relationships, or more social relationships, friends, work, family, to be able to recognize this is a friend or this is someone that I really deeply love, and um, I can go to see this movie with them, you know,
right,
um,
right,
and um, because I want to spend time with them
right.
and I want them to spend time with me. So it's it's hard because we're teaching and learning so many different things as we parent. Um,
Yeah,
that's where I think about it as the growth and learning how we tend to parent as opposed to how to parent.
right. And finding that, taking that step back and what's the priority here? What's most important,
Exactly.
you
And
know?
to bring it back to IEPs, the mental shift that parents often need to make is away from um, all kids are equal
Mhm.
to here's my kid and here's how it makes me feel that my kid's brain is developing whatever way it is, that this is what's happening, and
Right,
my kid needs this kind of box to see to the baseball field. My kid needs um, um, these supports in the classroom environment. um, we go to a vision exam for a kid and they tell us that our 3-year-old needs glasses. It's like, let's get him glasses.
right. Not a big
um,
deal,
no
but
big deal. um,
that's true.
and um, neurodevelopmental processes are not the same in that um, it's not because of some congenital um, vision thing, but it's really a product of the diversity um, of of how brains grow. Again, 200,000 years, our brains have been fundamentally within the same range of variation.
Yeah,
Um,
that's fine.
and it's in the last 200 years, maybe 150 years, that we've expected children to sit down in a classroom
No,
and learn from a single
yes.
person standing in the front of the room, and to sit and
Hmm.
behave.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
I am behaving. I'm throwing my pencil up in the air. What are you talking about?
Right. Exactly.
Um, but um,
Yeah.
what we see in a neurodiverse population, I'm leaning more towards using this word neurodiverse, because neurodivergent can be kind of in contrast with neurotypical. And there's no, from what I've seen and from what I understand, there's no like clinical or even medical definition of what neurotypical is.
Yep.
It's just people that are toward that center of a normal curve.
Yeah.
Um,
That makes
when
sense.
really we're talking about a neurodiverse human civilization um,
Right.
that has developed all of this software, all of these apps, using old hardware and an old operating system um, that doesn't update. That updates once every 500,000 million years at snail's pace.
Right.
Um, um, and out of this broad range of brains, we're expecting everyone to fit into all these kids to fit into the same environment. So
Right.
it really is about, to challenge my own metaphor. It's not about this kid has poor vision and needs glasses, but it's about, hey, out of 8 billion brains, this is my kid's brain. Wherever it falls on this normal curve that people have created, that people have drawn from
Right.
randomized studies, right? And here's the supports that my kid needs.
Right. And here's
Whether
the
that's
environment.
communicating it to the school, or noticing in ourselves as parents that we're inclined to want our kids to be a certain way right now, or as a pattern. And that pulls us away from seeing the kid in front of us.
Right. Letting go of the hopes and dreams for our child, and accepting who our child is and what their hopes and dreams might be, which, are different than what ours might be.
I think so. I think noticing what our own hopes and dreams are and kind of tagging those as our own hopes and dreams.
Yep.
I was super into music as a kid. I was in bands and all this nerdy stuff. And I try to get my son, we have a piano in our house. And I say, hey, do you want to play the piano? No. Do you want to do this musical thing? No. Do you want to take a music class? No. And it's like, that's not him.
Right.
Right now. And
that's okay.
I wish it was, and it's not him, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Because he's him and I'm me.
Right.
And it's tagging our own hopes and dreams for our kids. And like what we were saying earlier with trauma, with triggers. It's not about getting rid of it or turning it off. It's about tagging it for what it is. This is my feeling out of a trigger. Yeah. This is my hope and dream for my kid. How are any of these things either helping me or hindering me in being the parent that I want to be in this present moment? How much am I pushing how much am I pushing my kid to play the piano when he wants to do Legos, or he wants to play Mario Kart with me? And I'm like, no, I want to play the piano. Which is like sometimes how I feel about it inside, but
right. But the reality, but that's our issues, not
it's like, oh, you're not into it. Let's go do something else. Right? You did your math homework. Let's go hang out.
Yeah.
What do you want to do? That's you're getting to know your kid. Yeah.
Yeah. And letting your kid be your kid. Be who they are, right?
And discover who they are. Yeah.
Right. I was just noticing the time. I feel like we could talk all day, right? But before wrapping up, what is one thing that you could suggest that parents can start doing today that would make a big difference for them in lowering stress and feeling less overwhelmed?
It's a couple. I want to say one thing, but can I break it into a couple steps?
Of course, sure.
Okay.
However you want to do it. I didn't want to be like, give me 5 things,
Another thing that I'm borrowing from this psychiatrist Dan Siegel. Name it to tame it. When you are having a strong feeling, see if you can name it in your mind, even if you're not naming it out loud. Oh, here's this, and I can name it X. Once you've named it, you start to tame it. Once you've identified it, you've started to literally bring blood back to parts of your brain that can help to regulate your mind and body, and that can make more choices, that can access empathy for your kid, where you can see your kid and, oh, my kid is feeling really scared about going to soccer today, whatever. From there, breathe in and out through your nostrils or your mouth, doesn't matter. Breathe in and out, and notice that as you breathe in, the temperature is a little bit cooler relative to as you breathe out. It's a little bit warmer after it's been in your lungs. It's a subtle difference, but when you can tune into that sensation, you're capitalizing on more blood being in the parts of your brain that are with more intention, connecting with your body, connecting with the world around you. Whereas when we're stressed, that stuff tends to shut down. We tend to get kind of a tunnel vision or a frozen feeling.
Right.
So naming a feeling or a thought, breathing in and out, and notice as you breathe in, cool air, as you breathe out, a little bit warmer.
That is so awesome. I love that. And I can't wait to start practicing it. Thank you
I love
so
it
much,
because
Matthew.
it's not like square breathing. You don't have to like count or do it for a certain amount of time, and
Right. But it's just like, this is
don't have to
an
download.
anxiety attack, and that's okay. And now we're going to breathe through it. Right.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you so much. And thank you, Matthew, for coming on the show and sharing all of your words of wisdom with our listeners.
It's been a pleasure talking with you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. And thank you all for joining us on this episode of Stress Free IEP. We hope today's conversation gave you new tools, insights, or just a little more peace of mind as you support your neurodivergent child. Next week, we will have episode 138, where Dr. Maggie Kang on managing the emotional toll of IEP advocacy while getting results. Don't forget to subscribe so you never missed an episode. And if you found this episode helpful, please share it with someone in your village. You can always learn more and connect with me at schefterlaw.com or follow along on social media. Until next time, remember, you do not have to do it all alone.